Welcome to the Discovering Leadership podcast. My name is Corbin Hannis from Enturian. I'm joined by my co-host Carl Bowden from Exemplify Leadership. Hey Carl, what are we going to be talking about today?
Yeah, so we're going to continue our crafting strategy series. We're going to be talking about reflection and then also recycling of our strategic plan. What worked well, what didn't. Now, the Discovering Leadership podcast is focused on you. It's focused on instilling the foundations of leadership within you to ultimately enhance your business, your community, and your personal life. So we're going to be talking about relationships in this podcast, strategy. We're going to be talking about how to live to your most authentic self. We want to build a community of leaders. We want to lead leaders to multiply our effect, and we want to live by example. That is the ultimate goal of the Discovering Leadership podcast. Now, getting into our topic of reflection and recycling of our strategic plan, we're going to be hitting topics, such as, what worked well, what didn't work so well in that strategic plan. We're going to be really reflecting on the past to enhance our future. And then we're going to be talking about, when do we need to be flexible or adaptable within our plan? And then recycling what works and then innovating for growth in the future. So, knowing your past really gives you direction for the future. So, we have to reflect on the good times, the bad times, whether that be business or life.
Yeah. So one thing that is very important about this that we've talked about several times before is it comes down to if you don't know your current state, it's very difficult to define your current state by looking backwards. If if you can't look backwards, identify these historical trends, if you can't look backwards and see, okay, here's what we've found success in, here's what we're not finding success in. If you don't know those things, then you can't figure out your current state. If you don't know your current state, then you can't figure out what you should be doing going forwards. And it's very difficult to really achieve your goals, set proper goals, and make solid, sound business decisions.
Yeah, it's hard to understand what is good when we don't know what is bad. So we have to put ourselves in particular situations to know the difference between the two.
Yeah.
I know, there's been highlights of my life, but then there's also been those slumps, you know. A highlight might be getting my degree,
Yeah.
graduating from K State or eventually getting my MBA. Those are really big highlights. Or making it onto the K State drumline. That was one thing that was a big highlight for me in just my life.
Oh yeah.
Or in business with Exemplify, it could be you know gaining a speaking engagement for Penn State University. I had the opportunity to speak with them a couple times.
Yeah.
That was huge. But then, what are some of the things I didn't do so well? There's been times where I've reflected on, am I doing what's right in my sales process? Is this something I need to continue to do or maybe adjust going forward? So, there's especially being an entrepreneur, there's a
Yeah.
lot of there's a lot of lows, but then there's also a lot of highs. It's an emotional roller coaster.
One way to do that and practice it on a continuing basis is by just simply showing appreciation. Um, within Enturian, every week we have our team meetings on Monday mornings, and we end off the meeting every single week. We go around and I make all of our team members share one thing they're grateful for. So we practice sharing appreciation, showing it, and it really helps everybody with not only developing a deeper relationship and having a better personal connection with each other, but you start the week off with a smile. We talk about, "Okay, hey, what was great about your weekend? How was your weekend? What went on? Okay, here's our priorities for the week. Here's what we got going on. Now, let's end off the meeting with a smile. Tell me something you're grateful for." And it helps people, uh, it helps people start the week off on the right foot.
Wow, that's huge. When we can be thankful and show our appreciation for what we've been through, then that starts to lead a positive path forward.
Yeah.
And we have to celebrate those successes. When we celebrate those successes, that gives us hope for the future. It starts laying the path forward, even though that path might not have been built.
Oh, yeah. And figuring out whether or not it if you're going down the right path in the first place too. You might come to a fork in the road and require or realize that after you make a decision, say you went left down that fork in the road, that you should have gone right. Sometimes you don't necessarily make the right decisions. That's not always the greatest thing, or that's not always the worst thing either. You're put in that position for a reason, but whenever you are put in that position, you need to be able to recognize when the time to reflect and shift your position is. How do you reflect and figure out what worked and what did not work?
Yeah, we do have to figure that out. What works, what doesn't work, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses? There was a time in my life where I've really had to shift, and it was actually relatively recent. So, for those of you listeners that might have listened to this podcast before and who know me, there's been a time where I've been in conservation. So I was in that. I got my degree in conservation, and I worked in the field for about 5, 6 years. And in college, I was really passionate about leadership. That's really where I discovered, like, this is a calling for me. I need to listen to this. But after working in the conservation field, I wasn't really feeding that leadership passion as much, at least as much as I wanted to. Now, it got to the point I was in we were in COVID, in the midst of COVID, and
Yeah.
there was a huge shift in our organization, and I was doing more event planning at the time, and I my role completely shifted, and it came down to the point where they didn't need me anymore. So that got me to reflect.
Yeah.
It got me to look at myself. What am I good at? What what has a burning desire or a flame within me that I haven't really tapped into yet? That was leadership. And I had 2 months to figure it out. What do I do next?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the birth of Exemplify. And it was feeding what I was meant for, what I was really good at, what people were telling me,
Yeah.
like, "Hey, you know, all the things that you say to me, I feel inspiration or passion behind your voice." And sometimes I don't think I've really realized that within myself. But when I talk to those people, they help show the greatness within me,
Most definitely.
and I feel like I've done that with others, but sometimes I fail to realize that within myself.
Sometimes you need your own leadership coach.
Well, you definitely do, and it's very important for all coaches to have other coaches
Yeah.
because we need to start leading by example.
Oh, yeah, and, that makes a lot of sense. You were looking internally, and you were figuring out, "Okay, What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? You started focusing on those strengths. Your strengths are leadership qualities, and you're doing a really great job at it. Then you decide to pursue them, and now figuring out those strengths and pursuing them, you're focusing on the good gets better. I say that a million times. I'll say it a million more times. But part of leadership and helping develop others as well is making sure that you are understanding of your weaknesses. If you're consistently focusing on your weaknesses and say you start a business, for whatever it is, say you're starting a photography business, but you're spending all of your time doing accounting and bookkeeping. Me being in the accounting world, I see that all the time. I approach clients and they're spending all their time trying to navigate tax law to file their tax returns or spending time tediously keeping track of transactions to do bookkeeping. When come up to them, I'm like, "Why are you doing that?" Like, you got into leadership coaching, or you got into photography, like I was saying, or something else. You got into a passion to focus on your strengths. If your strengths were bookkeeping and if your strengths were doing taxes, then why didn't you start an accounting firm? You need to focus on those strengths that you have so that you can focus on the good and the good gets better. You're really gonna be able to expand that business if you keep focusing on those strengths. Now, that might just be the salesperson and me coming out to try to, make some deals sometimes, but nonetheless, it's very true. I see a lot of people trying to focus on things that they're not meant to be focusing on and that aren't truly providing a lot of value for them. For me, it might not even be doing taxes or bookkeeping anymore. Like, I've gotten luckily to the point where I've got a team around me now. I have an accountant on my team. He does a fantastic job with a lot of the bookkeeping tasks internally and for our clients. He's a lot better than I am. I have to be able to recognize that and put him in a position where he can utilize those strengths for the better purpose of our team. He's being a fantastic team member and helping us grow the team. And I'm I've gotta look at my strengths and look internally and say, "Okay, since he's better at me and I found a team member that can do a lot better than I can in certain very, very integral portions of our business, what are my strengths? Where should I be focusing my time within the business?"
That's so true. It kind of reminds me of the 80-20 rule too.
Pareto's principle, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we need to be focusing 80% of our time on the top 20% of tasks or really our strengths. What's going to give us the most return,
Oh, yeah.
and oftentimes in business or in leadership, we have a lot of people focusing on our weaknesses. We need to fix this, we need to fix that, we need to patch up this, you know we need to extinguish the fire.
Yeah,
you know and what we really get a lot of return from is focusing on those strengths, and that just amplifies, multiplies our growth when we focus on the strengths. Now, when we focus on the weaknesses, we might get better at it, but then, we're only kind of mediocre at it,
yeah.
you know, if that's within us internally. But, the cool thing about leadership is that we can still focus on our strengths, but in a business setting, we can hire people that have strengths and our weaknesses.
Oh, yeah.
We don't have to necessarily focus on our specific weaknesses within
Yeah.
ourselves or business, but we can start delegating and passing the baton to people that have the strengths that we're not good at.
Oh, yeah, and, even outside of business, you can apply those in a lot of different ways. I'm moving into a new living situation here soon, and I'm going to be living with a few roommates. We sat down and said, "Okay, how are we gonna divide up responsibilities for the house? Who's gonna be best doing what? What responsibilities should go where? From cleaning the common areas in different ways, from vacuuming to just, say, wiping down and disinfecting tabletops or dusting, taking out the trash, whatever it might be. Um, who's best suited for doing certain tasks? And what are the reasons behind that? It can also apply to relationships, especially if you're, uh, working with your significant other to have more of a partnership. The way I see it is if both people in the relationship are really, really fantastic at working all the time, then you're both always at work and you're both always focused on your career. How much focus is there on the actual relationship? How much focus is there on doing those household items or taking care of the home? If both people in the relationship are fantastic at just taking care of the house, then who's going out and providing for the family?
Yeah,
Some relation now that's not something that's universal. Some relationships might work where there's 2 people that are great at the same thing, you know? But the overlying concept is make sure that you know your strengths and weaknesses and utilize others to help make up for your shortcomings.
totally. You know, there's a lot of balance that goes within that too. Once we know our strengths, our weaknesses, how are we balancing our time between those? Whether that's in business or relationships. Now, going back to reflection and, strategy, we need to be flexible and adaptable. We might have an end goal, you know, this is what we want to accomplish. But oftentimes, like we've been saying, that there's often not a straight path to that end goal. We have to meet people at different waypoints, or we have to adjust the schedule, the timeline, whatever that may be. And it's kind of like a zigzaggy road.
Yeah,
Uh, but when we're adaptable, when we're flexible, that's when we can really, identify the opportunities to get us to that end goal. Now, when thinking about this, we have to kind of refer back to our purpose, our mission. Are we still being flat? Are we still being flexible and adaptable within our mission,
yeah,
within our overarching goals? Are we holding to our integrity?
yes. That integrity part that you were just mentioning is very key to that. Being flexible and adaptable is important whenever you're looking at your strategy down the road because you can't be married to one outcome. If you're married to a single outcome, then you're cutting off any alternative perspectives. And having those other perspectives come in is very important. But whenever you're being flexible and adaptable, there's a balancing act. Staying inside of your values, staying inside of your mission, your vision, your purpose is important. If you stray away from those values and the mission and the vision, then losing your integrity, what do you have? You'll have to eventually come back around, reflect, and look back and say, "Okay, what am I left with?" And if you compromise your purpose, if you compromise your mission and your values, it's it's probably not gonna be all too much that you're left with.
Yeah, it ultimately comes down to being honest with ourselves and where we're going. And if we identify a certain path that we're going down and it's just not working, we got to be honest and blunt with
Yeah,
ourselves. And then that's when we adjust. That's when we, be flexible to the plan. Now, when leading others, we have to clearly communicate that too,
yeah,
because, you know, that could almost be seen as not being, completely authentic or having integrity in what we're doing. But when we communicate, like, hey, we messed up,
Yeah.
and we have to pivot. We have to adjust in order to have a better outcome. That's holding to our integrity and
Yeah.
being authentic, but we have to clearly communicate that as well. That's huge. And sometimes it's tough for leaders to really, you know, communicate that effectively and honestly and openly, being authentic in that.
Most definitely. And part of that is being vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable with yourself and ask those difficult questions. The difficult questions are the important ones. And looking back and getting to that point, you have to recycle what works and innovate for growth. Moving forward, you have to make sure that you get rid of the bad and keep the good. I've probably said it this part or this episode, and I'll say it a million more times, but focus on the good, and the good gets better.
Exactly. We need to strengthen our strengths and fine tune our priorities, because, like what we were saying earlier, when you strengthen those strengths, you're multiplying your growth.
Yeah,
So if we don't have a strength in a particular area, who can who can we get on board that's gonna have that strength and going to amplify our growth? Now, when we're focusing on these strengths and getting other people in those weak areas that where they have those strengths,
yeah,
we're ultimately being more efficient in everything that we do, and we're constantly innovating for growth. So we keep what's good, recycling that within our strategy, but then innovating for growth based off of, hey, we didn't do so well in this specific area. Maybe it was finances, maybe it was our company culture, whatever that may be. We have to adjust for that.
yeah, exactly. It's it's important to make these pivots. It's like I think about it relating to Enturian in my business. Whenever I first started, I started with the idea I'm going to do tax returns. I'm going to file tax returns for whoever can fog a mirror. And if you need a tax return filed, come to Corbin. He'll get it done. If I would have stayed with that purpose and stayed with that same business model, I probably wouldn't. The Enturian wouldn't be alive today. It wouldn't be. It would not be a business. The reason why is because getting into the business that it at that point in time, looking at the market, I was looking around, and it's an increasingly commoditized service. Anybody can go to TurboTax. Anybody can buy some software and do their own taxes. You can figure out how to do it. A lot of people will come to me and say, "Why should I pay you to do it?" So we've had to make a pivot. Okay, why should why should they pay me? Well, now I'm licensed. I can do a lot more than just taxes. I have all these other services that I can provide to you. We can do tax advisory services. We can do tax resolution for people that have problems. Okay. Then I started realizing what what works, what didn't work. And okay, we were really effective as tax preparation because we started with that and now it's easy. We got the process nailed down, but we're not necessarily the best at tax resolution. That doesn't work us for reasons X, Y, and Z. Um, what we're really fantastic at, even better than tax prep, is tax advising. A lot of people love our advisory services. I ask my clients all the time, okay, what can I do better for you? How can I provide more value to you? What's keeping you awake at night? And then we're looking at these problems that the clients are having and trying to solve those problems, provide extra value, focusing on the good things that they want or that they're actually receiving from us, getting rid of all the bad things that don't work for us internally, don't work for our clients for whatever reason, and making sure that we can continue to provide value. looking at it from that entrepreneurial perspective, it's very important. Solving these additional problems, bringing new ideas in, brainstorming. I always love involving my clients in that. But to me, it's it's how are you focusing on creating a life or a business that is intentionally focused on significance?
Yeah. And your story there, you were continually reassessing your business, your strategy, where you want to go. And it's so critical to constantly reassess where we're going
Oh, yeah.
in our business, in our personal life, in the impact that we want to make. You realize that you're not just filing taxes,
Yeah.
but you're serving other people and their needs and giving them the advice that are going to ultimately help them lead their own life and lead their own finances. So we have to constantly be intentional in everything that we do. Are we being significant? So I want to challenge our podcast audience. What's one thing that you're doing to create a life or maybe a business of significance? I want to challenge you to write that down and then share it with others.
And share it with us. That's a fantastic point for us to transition to wrapping this up on. Go to Enturian.com or go to Exemplify.com or Exemplify Leadership. My apologies. Go to Enturian.com. That's Enturian.com or exemplifyleadership.com. You'll have all the links to our social media. Go share that with us. Find us on social media. Let us know. Check us out on YouTube. You can see the video format for all of our podcasts. This is important to us because we want to create that community of providing leadership to others, or providing these leadership foundations and these principles of leadership to others, and continuously build this community.
Exactly. This podcast is for you. This is the time for you to start investing in yourself and to start leading, to start taking initiative to find who you are and what you were meant to do. This is your time to grow your profits in your business and to get connected with the people that are ultimately going to enhance your life and your mission. So, this is your opportunity. And Corbin and I, we're here for you. We're here to support everything that you want to accomplish. So reach out to us on social media. Now, our next episode, we're going to be starting a new series about relationships. So, our first episode in that series is going to be focused on establishing the relationship. What does it take to build a healthy foundational relationship? Now, remember, you can catch any of these episodes every other Tuesday, either on Spotify, Google, or Apple Podcasts. Now, to end, remember, alone we survive, but together we thrive. We'll
We'll
see
see you
ya.
on the next episode.